But it's kind of like I'm being given this opportunity of like, are you sure you learned the lesson? Here's a little final exam. That's truly what this fucking feels like. Here's the final. Let's see how you do. Hey babes, welcome to Codependency Alchemy, the podcast where I share my personal journey of healing codependency in my life and my relationships by hopefully normalizing the messy process of the patterns that we have learned over generations, let's be real. And today, I really want to speak to the importance of learning your patterns and pattern tracking because it is saving my relationship right now. Now, the real MVP in this whole thing is honestly shadow work. Without it, I couldn't know my patterns and the things that I do to self-sabotage in my life. Shadow work has really allowed me to come into an intimate relationship with the parts of me that hold my fears, my doubts, and my unresolved trauma. And this week, a dream, which is, if you guys don't know, dreams are a very potent place for our shadow selves to come through. They're trying to communicate to us through our dream time sometimes. And your girl had the most activating dream and it sent me on a spiral, but I am on the other side and I am on the other side unscathed, and I'm on the other side within days of having this dream. And I can honestly say that I have been in full celebration mode for the past few days. I have been fully celebrating. That's like, it's almost like acing in an exam. That's what it feels like. I feel like I just aced the final 100 out of 100. Don't have to take this class anymore. Don't have to take this test anymore. Don't need to learn this lesson anymore. Like, I'm good. On to the next. That's kind of the vibe that I'm in right now. So let me tell you guys this dream that I had, what that dream illuminated or activated within me, and why doing years of shadow work has led to this moment where I am able to make a different choice than I have before. So first, what I'm going to tell you is a little bit about the pattern that I've uncovered over time, because my knowing or my awareness of this pattern is the reason why I was able to have this dream and go straight into processing it and understanding it in a different way. I have learned in my relationships, I have this pattern that comes up at about 2 years in. Every relationship I've had, traced back to my earliest relationship in high school. Every time I get to about the 2-year mark in my relationship, and I don't know if there's a reason why that happens. I don't know if that's like a common thing. I don't know if most people experience that, but I do. And what's interesting also is that when I get into a relationship, it typically is this like end of winter, beginning of springtime, like typically March. Like all of my anniversaries end up being March, more or less, interestingly enough. Again, don't know why that is. That's just what I've noticed by pattern tracking. When I was in my breakup with Justin, I was like, okay, I need to actually look at what's going on here, because all my relationships end the same. They all like have, and I'm the common denominator, right? Like I need to start taking accountability and responsibility for how my relationships are ending. So that was something that I learned back in 2019 when we were in our breakup. I realized every 2 years in my relationship, I would have this story or belief that I probably held unconsciously for a long time come to the surface, and I would fixate on it, and then I would find evidence to prove that it was true. So with my college boyfriend, I always had this fear that he was going to cheat on me. I always felt like he was always just like far enough away. He was so charismatic, and I just felt like an outsider looking in. And I never really felt like he was 100% in it, even though he probably was, and I just had this belief in my head that he loved me, yes, but also could cheat on me or something. I just had this fear. I had this fear, and at the 2-year mark, we had this huge fight, this huge explosion. I pushed him away, and it like brought all this up to the surface. And I went looking for evidence. I was just like, well, I won't even get into the details, but it was just like someone he worked with. I was like, you guys talk a lot. And I just would hyper fixate on this. So much so that, like, what am I doing? I'm literally pushing him away. I'm pushing him into the arms of the person he's working with, if anything. And we broke up. And just like Justin and I, like, we got back together. And with Justin and I, we were together longer, but we had gotten back together, and it was slightly better than the first time. I had learned a lot. I had put a lot of my fears down. But again, after 2 more years, what happens? There's this rupture again. I start going into all of these stories, and I'm like telling myself this isn't my person. And if it was my person, then we want different things. If it was my person, we would want the same things. And I would hyper fixate on it. And again, we broke up. And so back in 2019, when I was reflecting on, my college relationship and my relationship with Justin, I was like, oh my gosh, I do this thing. It's like every 2 years, I kind of like reach this point where my body or my nervous system is like, nope, it's too good. Nope, it's bad. Fixate, find even the smallest thing, create enough doubt and fear for you to literally self-sabotage and throw it all away. Like, just make it a dumpster fire, add fuel on it. And with my relationship with Justin, I noticed that like that kind of happened too. After 2 years, we didn't break up after 2 years, but there was this kind of like rupture. We moved through it, we stayed together, but then again at 4 years, same thing, it happened. So all of this to say, I have this pattern, right? I am aware that I have this pattern where when things are good in my relationship, when things are peaceful, when I'm starting to get into a groove of feeling safe and secure and happy, I find something to fixate my attention on to make my partner not my person. And I remember after my college boyfriend and I broke up, I went on a find myself journey. I moved to San Francisco, which did not work. I made it like 2 months. And then from there, I moved to Hawaii, which was a better opportunity financially for me, and stayed there for a year to find myself. And I did find myself in a lot of ways. And it was super healing and transformative. And I learned how like there was nothing actually wrong in my relationship with him. I just couldn't put down my fears. I just couldn't let go of my fears that he was somehow going to cheat on me. And it caused so much tension in our relationship that by 4 years of us being together, it was just like, what's the point? And I get it. I get why we went our separate ways. You guys, I'm having another awareness as I'm talking. My college, so I'm just going to process with you guys right now. So my college boyfriend, he and I had a little bit of a difference of what we wanted. I wanted to live in Oregon. He wanted to live in his hometown, or maybe not his hometown, but closer to his family. And so that was the perfect excuse, I guess, thing to cling on to be like, we want different things, so might as well just break up. I'm not to say that that's wrong, but that's what we did instead of trying to be like constructive about it. Well, what is it like? What do your dreams look like? What do my dreams look like? Are they aligned? And what's funny is that when Justin and I broke up, this is what I'm realizing right now, is like I did the same thing that I did with my college partner. We wanted different things. But I created it. I was like, well, I want this. Do you want this? And he was like, I kind of want this. And I was like, oh, we want different things. Interesting. it's an easy cop out, right? It's an easy cop out to just be like, oh, we want different things, so this relationship isn't the one. We're always going to want different things. We're always going to want different things. I don't think you find someone and you want all of the same exact things for fucking everything. Like, we're going to want different things. I think the challenge and the beauty of relationships is to not sacrifice, right? Not sacrifice, but to get creative about a life that you get to build together, if you choose, that holds both visions in a beautiful way. Yeah, I don't know. I'm getting totally off topic. Okay, looping back on track. I know this pattern of mine, and that's really important because I had a dream this week. And I'm just going to tell you what the dream was. It was like Justin and I and friends and family were all at this outdoor event that was kind of like a farmer's market, but also there was like bands and music playing. Everyone was sitting out. It was like a summer day. It was beautiful. And we come across this woman who's sitting at this table, and I don't know that it said psychic on her table, but that is what I remember when I woke up. It was like she was supposed to be a psychic. And I had asked her a question which was related to having a child. And if you guys are new to my world, then Justin and I have been trying to conceive for like 4 years. And it's been, I won't say a point of contention in our relationship, but definitely something I have struggled with personally as a woman, just feeling like I'm broken, like there's something wrong with my body, just a lot of things. So we put down that whole having a child thing last summer and just said, if it happens, it happens. We're just not going to put so much pressure on it. And so it was interesting that it came up in the dream because I feel like I really put that burden down last summer and have been feeling really good about that decision. So anyways, it was interesting that came up in the dream that this is what I wanted to ask the psychic, and she refused to give me a response. She was like kind of like covering her mouth and was just like, no, she just refused to answer me. And I remember not feeling like upset or angry about it. I was just kind of like, oh, whatever, like not a big deal. It's fine. And then went on our merry way and laid our blanket out and enjoyed the sun and the music. And then at one point, Justin was like asleep on the blanket. Again, remember, you guys, this is my dream. Justin's asleep on a blanket and taking a nap, and I'm enjoying the sunshine. And all of a sudden, the psychic is like, psst, like, come here, like pulling me in, like, hey, come here. But it was like covert, she's kind of sneaky about it, but also like rushing me towards her. And so I go over there, and oh, you guys, I forgot a piece. At one point during that day, I had asked Justin, do you want to have kids with me? And he had in the dream like this long pause and was like, sure. That was like his response. And I remember not thinking anything of it. Wasn't like, that wasn't enthusiastic enough. Like I didn't have any like attachments to it, but that is how he responded. That's important for this next piece with the psychic woman in my dream. So she is like, you're not supposed to have a child with him. And I was like, kind of hesitant, like, what? You don't know me. And she was just like, no, you're not supposed to have a baby with him. That's why you can't conceive. That's why you can't have a child. Because he's not supposed to be the father of the baby that you're supposed to birth. And I was like, okay, just very hesitant. I wasn't really feeling like it was true for me. And then she was like, when you asked him if he wanted to have a child with you, he paused, didn't he? And I was like, oh yeah, he did pause. And she was like, he just said sure, didn't he? And I was like, oh man, he did just say sure. How does she know, how does she know that? And she was like, that's why, like, you're not supposed to be with him. He's not sure, blah, 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 blah. Kind of just really intense energy I wouldn't say aggressive, like in a unsafe way, but like very intense energy, very overbearing. And the felt sense I got was just like graspy, tight, fear inducing, I will say. And for the majority of it, I was just kind of really sovereign. I felt like I wasn't moved by her intense energy until she was like, he just said sure, huh? He had a long pause, huh? Because in my dream it was kind of like, well, how would she know that? She knows that, so maybe she does know more than I know. And that's when the doubt started kind of creeping in. So after I leave the psychic woman, I go back to Justin. We go back to our hotel room. In our dream, we're like in this hotel room and we're spending this time together. We're like being intimate and it was beautiful. And then all of a sudden those fears started coming in. I was like, oh my gosh, but I'm not supposed to have a baby with him. He's not my person. Like tons of intrusive thoughts started just pouring in. And then some close friends of ours, they were walking by our hotel room in the window, and they have 2 small children. And I have such a close relationship with them and their children. And their oldest, like I swear her and I have done lifetimes together. Like we're just like very kindred spirits. And they came into our hotel room and like jumped on our bed, and the oldest, she kind of came up and sat next to me, and it was just so beautiful because it was very contrasting to the psychic energy, right, which was like intense and fear inducing. And this child, her oldest child, came up and put her hands on my stomach, like on my womb space, and she didn't say anything to me. She didn't say anything. She just placed her 2 little freaking cute little hands on my womb and just looked at me and just smiled. And what I heard in my dream was, it's okay. It's okay. And feeling like all of that fear and the doubt and the confusion just kind of like dissipate, and I softened. And then I woke up. And what's funny is the first thing I did, which is like such a old pattern of mine, and I'm sure a pattern that a lot of you guys can relate to. It's like, do you love me? How much do you love me? Why do you love me? Like it's like one of those validate me and praise me so that all these fears and doubts can be, diminished or dissipate, and I can feel safe. But I don't know if you've noticed, whenever they say, yeah, I love you, like I love you this much, I love you because blah, 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 it's like, it's never enough. That's because if you haven't listened to that podcast episode where I talk about codependency and I give that visual, like you cannot be filled with somebody's essence. I'll link it below because it is a good one to help you start seeing in a different way, like why when we grasp for that validation outside of us, it's just like never enough. But I woke up and the first thing I asked Justin was, do you want to have a baby with me? And I kid you fucking not, he had a long pause, just like in the dream. And then he said something like, it would be, what did he say? Gosh, it was something like it would be really hard or it would be really challenging or something like that. And I immediately went into, this is not my person. I want to have children. He doesn't want to have children, which is literally the reason why we broke up 4 years ago, or one of the reasons. And I clung to it. That morning, I was like, oh, he did the same thing in the dream. He did the same thing. And that psychic said he's not my person, and like started spiraling immediately. And I know that we are coming up on our we just kind of had our 4 years of coming back together. So I remembered, okay, we're at that 2-year mark. So can I see this as like a potential opportunity to do something different? Because what I'm doing is what I've done every other relationship, every other 2-year stint. I go into, this isn't my person, push them away, repel them away, run away. So I reached out to my friend who was actually in my dream. And I was like, hey, I had this dream. Are you open to processing it with me. And she was. So we got on the phone that day, and I had done a lot of thinking about it. I wasn't spiraling in an intense way that I had before. As soon as I realized, oh, it's that 2-year mark, we're coming up on 4 years. So, or we're just now celebrating 4 years. So that kind of helped me soften a lot. Like, okay, don't go spiraling out because this is the thing that you do. Like, what if we did something different this time? And because last time when we broke up 4 years ago, it was so painful. It was the probably most challenging time of my whole fucking life. And I promised myself that I would never, ever, 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 ever need to learn that fucking lesson again. I was like, I have learned. I don't need to learn that lesson again. I don't need to keep doing it. But it's kind of like I'm being given this opportunity of like, are you sure you learned the lesson? Here's a little final exam. That's truly what this fucking feels like. Here's the final. Let's see how you do. And so I'm processing with my friend, and she brought some really amazing reflections forward. Let's talk about the energy of the psychic woman, right? It's intense. It's graspy. She was even sneaky, right? She was like, psst, come here, come here. So I want to point that out because that is my shadow self, right? That is my shadow self that doesn't trust anyone, that doesn't think anything or anyone is safe. So it's trying to get me to self-sabotage, to remove myself from potentially being hurt, right? But the thing about our shadow selves is that when we don't meet them, when we don't tend to them, when we don't have an awareness of them and their thoughts and their beliefs, is that they end up running the show. They self-sabotage and, quite frankly, perpetuate the very thing that we were afraid of in the first place, which is getting hurt, being alone, being sad, feeling abandoned, right? That is how I felt leaving every relationship, because that shadow aspect of me self-sabotage. So now, because I have a relationship with this part of me, I was able to kind of see like, okay, this psychic woman is a shadow aspect of myself that doesn't feel safe and continuing to soften. That a part of me that doesn't feel safe continuing to receive love and peace and ease and joy and play, because that's really what my life has been abundant in these past few weeks. Like the start of 2024, after I went through my little depressy period, like it's been lit up. It's been so abundant, and it makes sense. It makes sense that this part of me wants to come up, because it's like, no, I don't know this new way of being. I don't know this new way of relating. I don't know this feeling. And so let's go back to what we know. Let's go back to pulling away. Let's go back to this not being safe. Let's go back into feeling hurt, feeling pain, feeling alone, feeling abandoned, feeling rejected, because that's what we know. So let's go back to it by me planting the seed of a story that makes you believe that this isn't your person. So you retreat and pull away, and you explode it, and you make it a dumpster fire, and you pour the gasoline on it, right? Because that's kind of what I do. I don't just like throw it away. I light it up on fire. Yeah, it's messy. So I love that my friend was able to reflect that energy in which the psychic woman was in, because as soon as she said that, I was like, yes, shadow self. Yes, part of me that is afraid. That's like being sneaky about it, right? Because spirit, truth, like divinely guided wisdom is not graspy. It is not intense. It is not sneaky. It is not intense like that, with like that overbearing, aggressive nature. That is not God, if you call it God. That is not source. That is not love. Love is soft. God is spacious. Wisdom from source is quiet and intuitive. That's why the contrast of her oldest daughter coming and placing her hands on my womb, she was reminding me of my I am presence. She was reminding me of my sovereignty. She was reminding me that my wisdom and my truth doesn't exist in some psychic woman outside of me telling me that this is not my person, that we are not supposed to have a child together, that my wisdom and my truth and my knowing reside within me. And bringing my attention and bringing my awareness back to that spacious place within me. And so I, after getting off that call, did some journaling, did some meditating, did some sitting with myself, because that dream is showing me the very much alive part of my shadow that does need to be tended to. The part of me that's afraid of the expansion, the part of me that's afraid of stepping more fully into my sovereignty and into my joy. And so I spent time with that part of me. I know it's scary. This is new. We haven't had this before. We haven't experienced this before. This is a new experience. What do you need in order to feel safe in receiving it and stepping more fully into it with me? And I'm telling you guys, like, more times than not, it's that simple acknowledgement. That simple acknowledgement is all they need. I'm telling you, almost every time after I validate the fear that is being expressed, it's almost like they soften. They just want to know that they're still coming along for the ride, that you're not abandoning them or leaving them behind. It's like, yeah, it's scary, but we're doing it together. And what do you need in order to feel comfortable and safe in stepping into that? And that's where I think inner child healing comes in too, so beautifully, because that shadow aspect of ourself is probably usually created from some place in childhood that said it wasn't safe to receive this much love, that it wasn't safe, that people, in our lives that love us are also the ones that are going to harm us. Like that is my truth. That was my experience, right? My parents, the ones who are supposed to keep me safe, the ones that were a source of love and connection, were simultaneously the ones that caused harm and hurt me. So what happens when I'm in a loving relationship with someone, that part of me says, no, but people who love you hurt you. People who love you harm you. People who love you abandon you, reject you, betray you. And so pattern tracking and knowing the stories and beliefs that those wounded parts of me have held for the majority of my life is literally the reason why I get to make different choices now. I'm reparenting. I'm holding the parts of me that say this isn't safe and saying, I get why you feel that way. And you're not wrong for feeling that. I totally get why you want to push this away. I get it. It's scary. And we're going to do this together. I'm going to do this with you. We're going to hold hands. We're going to move through this. What do you need? What do you need in order to do that? And sometimes I will hear something. Sometimes I will hear, I need to feel safe. I need peace. I need to scream into a pillow. Like sometimes there's like anger that needs to be expressed because of whatever we've maybe experienced in childhood. Offering a safe container and space for that emotion to be acknowledged and felt. We really don't want to bypass whatever emotions we're feeling. And so after I tended to that shadow aspect of myself and moved myself through that process, and I did it all in that day. Like it wasn't like it took months to do. Sometimes for me, it has taken months to do. This was all happening very quickly. And I think this is something that I'm seeing collectively for people who are doing this healing work, is that it's happening really fucking fast. Like one of the women who I supported in our Substack meetup last month, I spent 15 minutes guiding her one-on-one through a process of uncovering her block around wanting to feel intimate with her partner. And now she's like, my whole life has changed. I'm like a fucking waterfall of ideas and emotions, like floodgates are open, and like the intimacy with my partner is like out of this world. It's like, that's what happens, you guys. That's what happens when we begin to meet these parts of ourselves. Our hearts are just shattered wide open, and we're able to actually remember. That's really important. Like, we're remembering who we are. We are already whole. We are already healed. We just have forgotten that we are. This practice of shadow work and inner child healing and somatics is bringing our remembrance back into who we are. And so after tending to that part of me, I was like, I see my opportunity here. I see my opportunity to go back and learn the lesson again by exploding everything that's so fucking beautiful and great in my life, because a psychic in my dream told me that this is not my person, and Justin responded the exact way that he did in the dream. And so that, is fact. I've done that before. That like spiritual psychosis where I grab onto that and I cling onto it and I make meaning out of it and I fucking run with that. But this time I'm like, no, I'm not going to go into a psychosis over something that has been induced by fear, that has been induced by an energy that is intense and overbearing and graspy. I'm going to choose a different one. I'm going to choose the one that's more peaceful. I'm going to choose the one that allows me to stay in the joy and the ease that I have created in my life. I'm telling you guys, this process is so powerful, and I was really excited to have this experience to share on the podcast, because a common sentiment I often get from people who either DM me, leave me a comment, or are even, subscribers on Substack, is that we're supposed to reach this place where we don't have these hiccups, if you will, that we don't have these activations or triggers or moments where we're in the pattern again. And that just couldn't be farther from the truth. Like, I think when we hold that idea that we're supposed to be null and void of finding ourselves in these patterns again, I think when we believe that, we are just continuing to perpetuate shame and guilt onto ourselves, and judgment, quite frankly. Because when we find ourselves in the pattern, if we go into shaming ourselves for finding ourselves in it again, which I could have done, right? I could have been like, oh my gosh, I found myself in this pattern again. I'm doing the thing that I do. And like, why can't I just be done with this? Instead, I'm like, oh, I'm doing the thing I'm doing. How can I hold myself through this pattern that I'm in, that I have been in, and probably will be in again, right? Like, it moves so much quicker because I'm not sitting in the muck of guilt and shame. It happens as many times as it happens, babes. The pattern comes up as many times as the pattern comes up. The point is that you continue to bring awareness to it. You continue to take responsibility for it. You continue to make choices that are more aligned when you do realize you're doing it. That is our responsibility, right? I couldn't help that pattern came up in my relationship, and I couldn't help how I treated Justin that morning, because I didn't have awareness that I was doing it yet, but it was right when I did have awareness. That's my responsibility to take ownership. That's why I went to Justin and said, hey, I notice I'm doing this thing, and this is what I want to tell you about what I learned. This is what I'm going to choose to do instead, because I deserve that, because you deserve that. It is important that we let our partners know the work that we're doing, because they are not responsible for that. They need to know that, Justin needs to know that his response, his pause and answer to my question is not a problem. He is not a problem. He is entitled to his response, and that I appreciate his honesty. That's what I want him to know. I don't want him to think I said what was true for me and she pulled away, and so now I can't speak my truth. No, that's not what I want. So that's why it was important for me to go back to him and make that repair. I bet you guys didn't know so much meaning could be made out of a dream. And it's so funny. I remember when I was in Hawaii with my brother and my dad, I go through these periods where I make meaning out of everything. And my brother was so funny. I was telling him about this thing that I had experienced and all the meaning I basically had made out of it, out of the wind blowing and blah, blah, blah. And he was like, do you just make meaning out of everything? And my response was so interesting. I was actually surprised by it. What I said to him is like, everything and nothing has meaning. Like, I get to choose what I make meaning out of. So if I don't want to make any meaning out of it, then I don't make any meaning out of it. If I do, I will absolutely be able to find a way to make meaning out of something. And that's our free will, right? That's our free will. That's our prerogative. We get to choose what has meaning and choose what doesn't have meaning. And I think there's so much fucking power in that. So, babes, I hope you got some value out of me sharing this journey, this process that I've been on this week. And I hope there's this curiosity to continue to get more curious maybe about your own patterns and what you notice, because that's honestly the roadmap and the blueprint to our healing, is getting really familiar with the stories that we tell ourselves about ourselves or about others, because that is what plays a role in how we relate to the world. If you're curious about shadow work prompts, if you want more guidance, if you're like, I don't know where to start, definitely check out Codependency Alchemy, the course. It's a 5-week self-paced course that I walk you through 5 of the most common codependency patterns, and every single module has a shadow work section specifically to help guide you in seeing what your truths are, what your beliefs are, what your stories are, and an inner child and somatic section, which helps you get to the root and beginning to cultivate a relationship with that part of you, which is truly why I'm able to navigate and move through this whole experience with the amount of ease and gentleness that I was able to. And hey, maybe you're like, I want to be in a room with you. I want some one-on-one support. I want to experience a little bit of the magic that woman who spent 15 minutes with you had. Please join the Codependency Alchemy membership. It's a paid Substack subscription. It's $9 a month. You get a masterclass where we meet together virtually. You also get a group coaching call every month. We call them meetups, monthly meetups. And that's where I do my hot seat coaching with you guys. It is the most sacred space. I'm so honored and grateful to be able to hold it, because the truth of the matter is, this healing journey is messy. It's messy. It can be isolating. We can feel alone as fuck in it, and we don't have to do it alone. We get to do it in community. It was something that I really craved when I was in my depths, and I wish I had, which is why I created Codependency Alchemy, the membership, in the first place. Because even I need a space to be able to show up and see that we are not alone in healing the mother wound, that we are not alone in healing these dysfunctional ways of relating, that there are so many of us stepping into our power and into our authenticity. And it's important to stay inspired and held by women who are doing the same. And if you sign up from this episode, I will leave a special discount code below as my gift to you for taking the courage to step into this powerful work that is ultimately going to lead you to more sovereign, authentic, reciprocal, loving relationships that you deserve. I hope you all have a beautiful day, and I will see you next week. Love you.